How's it going? Adam Drake here, and today I'm going to talk about trigger mode for the Futaba T10PX radio system. So I did a video on the previous model, the 7PX or the 7PXR. They had the same setting, but with the T10PX, they've taken it a little bit farther. So I'm going to go into the main menu, and then let's see here, linkage menu, and then go into trigger mode. So with trigger mode, it will come default as 50-50. So if you look at the full range of the trigger, so from full brake to full throttle as 100 steps, the stock setting will come 50-50. So 50 from neutral, you'll have 50 steps to full brake, and then from neutral to full throttle, you'll have 50 steps to full throttle. And with previous radios, you could do either 50-50 or 70-30. Well, now with this model radio, you can do 50-50, you can do 60-40, so 60 for throttle, 40 for brake. You can do 70-30, or you can do 100-0. I'm assuming the 100-0 is maybe for drag racing, something where you just need the full range of the throttle and you don't use brakes. But it's pretty nice because you can really kind of fine tune to your liking. So for myself, I prefer to use the trigger mode ratio of 70-30. So out of those 100 steps from neutral to full throttle, I have 70 steps of trigger for the throttle and then 30 steps for the brakes. And the reason for that is, with me racing off-road, a lot of times the track conditions are lower grip or they get bumpy. I really want to make sure that the delivery of the throttle and that I'm able to put the power to the ground as smooth and as precise as possible. So I want to have a few extra steps, so 20 extra steps of trigger. So even though I have that same range from neutral to full throttle, it's going to be a bit more precise as I'm applying the throttle. Now, it is going to make the brakes a little bit less precise, and potentially if you're racing 10 scale, like 10 scale two-wheel drive on a same type of condition where it's kind of dusty or bumpy, you may want to use like the 50-50. That way the brakes are going to be a little bit smoother and more precise. But being that I race 8 scale off-road and it's 4-wheel drive, we're on dirt, I want the throttle to be as smooth and precise as possible. And then on the braking side, I'll make adjustments with the brakes more mechanically through the car, as far as my brake bias and the overall brake force, which I'll do through the EPA on the radio. But for the most part, with it being 4-wheel drive, you're not really like feathering or rolling the brakes on as smooth as you are rolling the throttle on. So for me personally, I use the 70-30 trigger mode. If you do change your trigger mode, so if you've bound your receiver to the radio, set up your linkage, and you change the trigger mode, you are going to have to reset your neutral point for the servo. So you'll have to take the servo horn off. And then you will have to reset your throttle and brake EPA. So I always just set mine at 70-30. That's where I like it. But when I was testing it to find out the trigger mode that I liked the best, I would just take the screw out, pull the throttle horn off, change the trigger mode, and then recenter it, and then reset my throttle and brake EPA. So don't freak out if you change your trigger mode and you see the servo jump and then your settings are all off. That's normal, because again, you're changing kind of how you're using those 100 steps from full brake to full throttle. So again, 70-30 for me, and hopefully you guys are able to test the different trigger modes yourself and see what works best for you in your racing.